I'm your host, named bin Mohammed Rafi, and here is my YouTube channel, Zamir Universal. What the hell is going on with Donald Trump? That man has played havoc. When you have a wild bull or you have a wild boar out in the open, what you expect? You expect that will destroy every field, everywhere that animal goes. And those who elected this mentally deranged, ill person, egocentric, womanizer, child molester, completely immoral and sold out and be a slave and dirty slave of the Jews who paid for him, and he lives on their leftovers, and he built all that real estate and his survival because they have his wild, naked children crying videos of this man naked, and such an immoral man. You impeached Clinton for an intern, and if you multiply that with thousands and thousands of sins committed by this person, then why you are not impeaching this man? Why, when the German Chancellor said about this is a mentally deranged person and arrogant, the South African president said the same, that he has never been insulted. The Ukrainian president was almost thrown out and his lunch was cancelled. This man has such an inferiority complex that he is signing executive order after executive order, reducing the Congress, Senate to a dirty word S. And when such a filth, such a dirt, and when you look at the rotten past of these the terrorists, you will not find any parallel with such a terror anywhere in the world. They created ISS, they created all sides of Al Qaeda, funded that, and the world thinks that they are the one who love democracy and they are the one who like human rights and the freedom of speech. It's just the opposite. I think the time has come, and these few clippings I'm going to show you that what this man holds in his heart is the poison against Muslims, poison against Somalians, poison against the non-whites, poison against those people who actually killed the Native Americans, the Indians, and those rotten immigrants who came here 200 years ago, and they think that they bloody own the America, which they don't. And they're going after 60, 65 countries and invading them and looting them and robbing them and then building their roads and skyscrapers with that money. That's what I think that the pirates did in the House of Commons way back in United Kingdom, and then the Vikings, and now you can see the pirates, and you could see these traitors, the dirtiest, the filthiest, and this is why the birds of feathers flock together. You have the another dirtiest, the Jews, especially the Zionists, joining these people together. There is no such thing as a Christian world. All we have is dirt, filth, and rotten warmongers, people there in the world. And the year 2026 is going to be perhaps the last one. It has been prophesied for this man, and we'll see the end of it. As soon as the midterm comes, this guy must be impeached. If the Americans want any respect in the world, they have to get rid of this man.
Why wouldn't you dedicate yourself to public service?
Because I think it's a very mean life. I would love and I would dedicate my life to this country, but I see it as being a mean life, and I also see it that somebody with strong views and somebody with the kind of views that are maybe a little bit unpopular, which may be right, but may be unpopular.
I am your voice. So to every parent who dreams for their child, and every child who dreams for their future, I say these words to you tonight. I am with you, I will fight for you, and I will win for you. We will make America strong again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. God bless you. Good night.
Who said she was 13 when the president hurt her.
Donald Trump knew that I was 13 because the first night that I was there, Tiffany actually suggested that, and she had a whole bunch of different wigs, and I expressed interest in them. You know, I always told her that I would love to walk around with blue hair, and so I tried some on, and there was a blonde wig that she said that looked great on me, so I wore that wig, and Donald Trump had specifically asked about me because I remind him of his daughter, and she said, well, she's 13 as well. So he knew the first time that he saw me, but he took a liking to me because I look like his daughter. The reason I'm coming out now is when it happened originally, I just wanted to forget about the whole incident. And when I saw that he was running for president, I felt it was my responsibility to come out and tell our country what kind of man this person is.
Yeah, so that was Katie Johnson. She's one of Trump's alleged victims. She came out in the 2016 election cycle and said that Donald Trump touched her, defiled her when she was 13 years old. And as she said there, Donald Trump said he took a liking to her because she looked like Ivanka, who was also 13. And let me remind you, Donald Trump has a very strange relationship with his daughter.
Yet at times, his fatherly praise is downright cringeworthy, like on The View in 2006.
I've said that if Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her. You know?
Stop it! Oh, it's so weird. Stop You know it. What? You are sick.
Far from protecting his daughter from being talked about as a sex object, he has encouraged it multiple times. On Howard Stern's radio show in 2004 and then again in 2006.
By the way, your daughter,
She's beautiful.
can I say this? A piece of ass.
Yeah.
She looks more voluptuous than...
Guys, we're going to keep going, but that will never freak me out. That's so fucking weird. It's weird. It's gross. It's gross. How did we elect this guy? I know we didn't, but how did this country elect this person? It's just disgusting.
Never.
She's actually always been very voluptuous. She's tall. She's almost 6 feet tall.
In May, Ivanka described herself as a feminist while defending her father on CBS after a scathing New York Times article about his alleged negative treatment of women.
Is there unending commentary on the female form?
No. I've known my father, obviously, my whole life, and he has total respect for women.
Please welcome the lovely Ivanka Trump.
Still, even Ivanka seemed confused when talk show host Wendy Williams asked about things the two have in common.
What's the favorite thing you have in common with your father?
Either real estate or...
They're naked, and he said he could get away with it because he owned the company.
No, I mean, some of these foreign girls, you know, Mr. Trump, in my country, we say hello with vagina. And,
Well, you could also say, as the owner of the pageant, it's your obligation to do that.
So you have done that. Now,
I'll tell you the funniest is that I'll go backstage before a show.
Yes.
And everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And, you know, no men are anywhere. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. You know, I'm inspecting. Right, I want to make sure that
you're like
everything is good.
You're there.
Yeah, the dress. Is everyone okay? You know, they're standing there with no clothes. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible-looking women, and so I sort of get away with it.
Yeah, well, you're not getting away with it much longer, are you, bitch? Now let's just mark it in the sand. Donald Trump is officially a lame duck. He is on his way out. He is losing power by the day. And that is why Thomas Massie earlier today reminded Republicans that though they might vote to protect Trump today, it'll come back to bite them eventually.
To happen, I would remind my Republican colleagues who are deciding how to vote, Donald Trump can protect you in red districts right now by giving you an endorsement, but in 2030, he's not going to be the president, and you will have voted to protect pedophiles if you don't vote to release these files, and the president can't protect you then. This vote, the record of this vote, will last longer than Donald Trump's.
Cuts off there, but says the record of this vote will last longer than Donald Trump's presidency. Yeah, it will. It will. So I think when you put all this stuff together, stuff we know in the public, what people have accused him credibly of, what Donald Trump is trying to stop from being released, it's a really dark, disturbing moment in American history. But I guess the one silver lining to all this is it's all coming to a head. Finally, it's coming to a head. And we're seeing that with the rift of Marjorie Taylor Greene and the rest of them, that Donald Trump isn't powerful. He isn't this unstoppable force. And it is really interesting that it's taken something like Epstein, the thing he helped bring to the limelight by saying he was going to release all these files. Now,
Venezuela's oil, Trump, you're going to have to invade it. And you're going to have to invade it with hundreds of thousands of soldiers, just like the United States did in Vietnam. Has anyone told you what happened in that war that you couldn't make, that you got 7 deferments for on account of your bone spurs? Because you didn't want to die face down in a rice paddy in Southeast Asia, did you? You didn't want to go and fight, but you send other people's sons and daughters to go and fight for you. You're a chicken shit, chicken hawk, Donald Trump. Peace president. You're an animal. You're a filthy animal, Donald Trump. That's what you are.
तमाद कमजोर होता है और यही वो खला है जिसे मुख्तलिफ बयानिए अपने हक में इस्तेमाल करते हैं। इसी दौरान ऑस्ट्रेलिया और न्यूजीलैंड जैसे ममालिक में होने वाले अवामी इज्तिमाआत, दुआएं और मुजाहरे ये जाहिर करते हैं कि अवामी सतह पर राय अब भी मुतहर्रिक है। ये ममालिक अमूमन एहतदाल, कानून की बालादस्ती और शहरी आज़ादियों के हवाले से जाने जाते हैं, और वहाँ होने वाले एहतजाज इस बात की याद दहानी है कि रियासती पॉलिसी और अवामी जज्बात हमेशा यकसा नहीं होते। ये सूरत हाल आने वाले वक्त में मज़ीद पेचीदा हो सकती है, क्योंकि एक तरफ रियासतें सिक्योरिटी खदशात के नाम पर सख्त पॉलिसियाँ अपनाती हैं और दूसरी तरफ अवाम इजहार राय और इंसाफ का मुतालबा करते हैं। इस तसादुम का नतीजा अक्सर समाजी तनाव, सियासी तकसीम और बाज़ औक़ात तशद्दुद की सूरत में निकलता है, जिसके असरात सरहदों से बाहर तक जाते हैं। अगर हम इस पूरे मंजरनामे को मजमूई तौर पर देखें तो ये वाज़े होता है कि दुनिया एक ऐसे मरहले में दाखिल हो रही है जहां आलमी निज़ाम पर नज़रसानी हो रही है। पुराना वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर, जो सर्द जंग के बाद किसी हद तक इस्तेहकाम का तासुर देता था, अब मुताद्दिद महाजों पर दबाव का शिकार है। नए इत्तेहाद, नए तनाज़े और नए बयानिए इस निज़ाम को मुसलसल चैलेंज कर रहे हैं। इसराइल की जानिब से आने वाला ये बयान इसी बड़े अमल का एक हिस्सा मालूम होता है, जहां रियासतें अपने मफादात के तहफ़्फ़ुज़ के लिए ज़्यादा बराह रास्त, ज़्यादा सख्त और कम सिफारती ज़बान इस्तेमाल करने लगी हैं। इसका कलील मुद्दत फ़ायदा ये हो सकता है कि पैगाम वाज़े हो जाए।
Would return to power, but his second period in office would be marked by 3 major crises that happen in rapid succession. First, an economic event that shakes global markets. Casey described it as a crumbling of false foundations, a moment when systems built on debt and speculation would collapse. He said this would happen suddenly, catching everyone off guard, and that it would be triggered by something connected to international trade and alliances breaking down. Does this sound relevant right now? With Trump's promises to implement massive tariffs, to renegotiate international agreements, to shake up the global economic order? Casey said the leader's own policies would inadvertently trigger the crisis he claimed he would prevent. And in 2026, according to the reading, this economic shockwave would hit with full force. The second crisis Casey described was environmental. He spoke of natural disasters increasing in frequency and intensity during this period. Specifically, he mentioned the East Coast of America facing water-related catastrophes. Now, Casey was famous for his predictions about Earth changes, and while some of his timelines have been debated, the pattern is undeniable. He said that human actions, particularly actions by leaders who ignore environmental warnings, would accelerate these natural responses. In 2026, he saw flooding, extreme weather, and what he called the sea, claiming what man had built. Think about Trump's environmental policies, his position on climate change, his focus on deregulation. Whether you agree with these policies or not, Casey's reading suggests that in 2026, the consequences of ignoring environmental warnings would manifest in dramatic and undeniable ways, and he specifically connected this to the leadership in place at that time. But the third crisis is the most shocking. Casey spoke of a constitutional crisis, a moment when the very foundations of American democracy would be questioned. He described a scenario where the leader would refuse to accept limitations on his power, where institutions would clash, and where the American people would be forced to choose between security and freedom. He used the phrase civil strife repeatedly in his readings about this period. Here's where it gets really unsettling. Casey described a specific event that would serve as a trigger point. He called it the judgment of the builders, a moment when those who had built their fortunes and power on questionable foundations would face legal and public reckoning. Now, Trump has been facing legal challenges unlike any former president in history. Multiple indictments, civil cases, accusations that have divided the nation. Casey's reading suggests that in 2026, these legal issues would reach a crescendo, a point where they could no longer be ignored or dismissed. According to the reading, this legal crisis would happen while the leader is in office, creating a situation never before seen in American history. Casey described it as a test of the republic, a moment when Americans would have to decide which principles they truly valued. He said the outcome would not be what anyone expected, that both sides would find themselves shocked by what unfolds. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds too specific. How could Casey have known all this? And that's exactly the right question to ask. Skeptics have always questioned Casey's methods and accuracy. But here's what makes Casey different from other prophets and psychics. His track record is documented. His hits are undeniable. He predicted both world wars before they happened. He described the stock market crash of 1929 with eerie precision. He predicted the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls decades before they were found. He described medical treatments that didn't exist in his time, but have since been proven effective. The man had an accuracy rate that statistical analysis shows could not have been random chance. So when Casey made specific predictions about America in the 2020s, researchers pay attention. But let's go deeper into what makes the 2026 prediction so specific. In reading 1602-3, given in 1938, Casey was asked about the future of democracy. He said that America would face a choice in the middle of the 2020s decade, a choice between moving forward with evolved consciousness or falling backward into authoritarian patterns. He specifically mentioned the number 26 in connection with this choice point. Now, Casey often spoke in symbolic language, but his stenographers recorded exactly what he said, and the number 26 appears multiple times in readings about America's political future. What exactly did he see happening? According to the synthesis of multiple readings, Casey described a scenario where the controversial leader would implement policies that initially appeared successful. There would be a brief period, perhaps the first year of the return, where supporters would feel vindicated. Economic numbers might look good. Certain promises might appear to be kept. But Casey warned this was a false dawn, what he called the calm before the great storm. In 2026, according to these readings, three things would converge. The economic policies would begin to show their true cost. The international relationships that had been damaged would collapse entirely, leaving America isolated at a crucial moment. And the internal divisions would reach a breaking point, manifested in what Casey described as unprecedented civil unrest. But here's what makes this prophecy truly shocking. Casey didn't predict failure or success in the traditional sense. He predicted transformation through crisis. He said that what would appear to be disaster would actually be the necessary catalyst for America's evolution. He spoke of the old systems needing to die so that new ones could emerge. And he specifically said that the leader at the center of this storm was playing a role in a much larger cosmic drama, whether he knew it or not. Casey described Trump, though not by name, as a disruptor whose purpose was to expose the cracks in the foundation. In this view, everything that happens in 2026, all the chaos and crisis, serves a higher purpose. It forces Americans to examine their values, to question their systems, to decide who they really want to be as a nation. Casey said that by the end of 2026, America would not be the same country it was at the beginning of the year. The change would be that profound. Now,
क्या है? इस वीडियो में इसराइली वज़ीर आज़म बनियामीन नेतन्याहू की जानिब से जो बातें सामने आईं, वो महज एक रिवायती सिफारती बयान नहीं थीं, बल्कि एक वाज़ेह, बराह रास्त और गैर मामूली इंतबाह की सूरत में पेश की गईं। इस इंतबाह का मुखातिब सिर्फ एक मुल्क या एक खित्ता नहीं था, बल्कि यूरोप, मगरिब और बिलवास्ता तौर पर पूरी दुनिया थी। बयान का मरकज़ी नुक्ता ये था कि इसराइली शहरियों या यहूदी बरादरी को दुनिया के किसी भी हिस्से में नुकसान पहुंचा तो इसकी जिम्मेदारी मुताल्लिका रियासतों और हुकूमतों पर आयद की जाएगी और इसराइल इस जिम्मेदारी का हिसाब लेने का हक महफूज रखता है। ये बात आलमी सियासत में एक गैर मामूली दावे के तौर पर देखी जा रही है, क्योंकि रियासतें उमूमन इस नौइयत के बयानात को ज़्यादा मोहतात और सिफारती ज़बान में पेश करती हैं। यहाँ बराह रास्त ये कहा गया कि बाद में लाइल्मी या इंतज़ामी नाकामी का उज़्र काबिल कबूल नहीं होगा, क्योंकि इंतबाह पहले ही जारी कर दिया गया था। इससे ये तासुर मजबूत होता है कि इसराइली क़ियादत मौजूदा हालात को महज दाखिली या रियासती मसला नहीं समझ रही, बल्कि इसे एक वसीतर आलमी तनाजुर में देख रही है। ये बयान ऐसे वक्त में सामने आया है जब गज़ा में ज़मीनी सूरत हाल पहले ही शदीद इंसानी बहरान की शक्ल इख्तियार कर चुकी है। इत्तलात के मुताबिक वहाँ पम्फलेट्स तकसीम किए जा रहे थे जिनमें लोगों को इलाके खाली करने की हिदायत दी जा रही थीं और साथ ही फौजी कार्रवाइयाँ जारी थीं। इस पस मंज़र में ये इंतबाह महज एक हिफाजती बयान नहीं रहता, बल्कि इसका ताल्लुक ताकत के इजहार, नफसियाती दबाव और बयानिए की तश्कील से भी जुड़ जाता है। यहाँ ये समझना ज़रूरी है कि आलमी सियासत में बयानात सिर्फ अल्फाज नहीं होते, बल्कि वो पॉलिसी, इरादे और मुमकिना इक़दामात की झलक भी होते हैं। नेतन्याहू के इस बयान को बाज़ तज्ज़ियाकार इस बात के ऐलान के तौर पर देख रहे हैं कि इसराइल अब आलमी सतह पर अपने खिलाफ होने वाले एहतजाज, तनकीद और सियासी दबाव को बराह रास्त एक सिक्योरिटी थ्रेट के तौर पर देखने का इरादा रखता है। इसका मतलब ये हो सकता है कि इजहार राय, एहतजाज और सियासी सरगर्मियों की आज़ादी पर मुख्तलिफ मुल्कों में दबाव बढ़ सकता है, ख़ास तौर पर वहाँ जहाँ फ़लस्तीन के हक़ में आवाज़ें बुलंद हो रही हैं। बयान में ये नुक्ता भी नुमाया था कि अगर किसी मुल्क में इसराइल मुखालिफ सरगर्मियों को रोका ना गया तो इसे इसराइली अवाम के खिलाफ इक़दाम तसव्वुर किया जाएगा। इस जाविये से देखा जाए तो ये महज सिक्योरिटी का मसला नहीं रहता, बल्कि ये रियासती खुद मुख्तारी, शहरी आज़ादियों और बैनुल-अक़वामी कानून के उसूलों से भी टकराता दिखाई देता है, क्योंकि आम तौर पर किसी रियासत के अंदर एहतजाज या सियासी इजहार उस रियासत के अपने आइनी और कानूनी दायरा कार में आता है, ना कि किसी बैरूनी रियासत के कंट्रोल में। यहाँ एक अहम सवाल ये भी पैदा होता है कि इस तरह के बयानात आलमी ताकतों के साथ ताल्लुकात पर क्या असर डाल सकते हैं। जब किसी रहनुमा की जानिब से बराह रास्त ये कहा जाए कि अगर हमारी बात ना मानी गई तो इसके नताइज होंगे, तो ये दरअसल एक किस्म का दबाव या अल्टीमेटम समझा जाता है। बैनुल-अक़वामी सियासत में ऐसे अल्टीमेटम्स अक्सर या तो मुकम्मल इताअत का रास्ता खोलते हैं या फिर तसादुम की बुनियाद बनते हैं, और दोनों सूरतें आलमी इस्तेहकाम के लिए पेचीदा नताइज लेकर आती हैं के साथ वाज़े पैगाम और अमली सलाहियत के तासुर के साथ सामने आते हैं। इसी दौरान इसराइल और भारत के बढ़ते हुए ताल्लुकात भी इस पूरे मंजरनामे का एक अहम हिस्सा हैं। हालिया दिनों में भारतीय वज़ीर ख़ारिजा जयशंकर की इसराइल आमद और नेतन्याहू से मुलाकात को महज एक रस्मी सिफारती सरगर्मी के तौर पर नज़रअंदाज नहीं किया जा सकता। भारत, इसराइल और मगरबी ताकतों के दरमियान सिक्योरिटी, इंटेलिजेंस और टेक्नोलॉजी के शोबे में ताउन पहले ही एक तस्लीम शुदा हकीकत है, और ऐसे मौक़े पर मालूमात का तबादला आलमी सियासत के कई पहलुओं को मुतासिर करता है। कुछ रिपोर्ट्स के मुताबिक ऑस्ट्रेलिया में पेश आने वाले वाक़े के बाद यूरोपीय ममालिक और दीगर मगरबी रियासतें भारत समेत मुख्तलिफ मुल्कों से ये जानने की कोशिश कर रही हैं कि उनके यहाँ मुमकिना नेटवर्क्स, ख़तरात और सरगर्मियों की नौइयत क्या हो सकती है। नुमा को अंदरूने मुल्क शदीद तनकीद, कानूनी मसाइल या सियासी मुखालिफत का सामना हो तो वो अक्सर कौमी सलामती और बैरूनी ख़तरात के बयानिए को ज़्यादा नुमाया कर देता है। इससे ना सिर्फ दाखिली इख्तिलाफात पस मंज़र में चले जाते हैं, बल्कि क़यादत को एक मजबूत मुहाफ़िज़ के तौर पर पेश करने में भी मदद मिलती है। यही वजह है कि बाज़ तज्ज़ियाकार इस बयान को गज़्ज़ा में होने वाले इक़दामात के बयानिए को बदलने या ओवरशैडो करने की कोशिश के तौर पर भी देखते हैं, यानी तवज्जो को इंसानी बहरान से हटाकर आलमी सिक्योरिटी और यहूदियों के तहफ़्फ़ुज़ के मसले पर मरकूज़ करना। ये एक मारूफ सियासी हिकमत अमली है, जिसमें बयानिए की सिमत बदलकर दबाव को कम करने की कोशिश की जाती है। बयान में अमरीका के हवाले से जो बात कही गई वो भी गैर मामूली नौइयत की थी। ये कहना कि अमरीका का वजूद या इस्तेहकाम इसराइल की वजह से है, एक ऐसा दावा है जो सिफारती आदाब से हटकर है और इसके कई मुमकिना मफहूम निकाले जा सकते हैं। इसे बाज़ लोग दाखिली सामईन के लिए एक मुबालगा आमेज़ बयान समझते हैं, जबकि बाज़ इसे इत्तेहादियों पर दबाव डालने की एक अलामत के तौर पर देखते हैं। बैनुल अक़वामी सियासत में इत्तेहादी ताल्लुकात हमेशा बाहमी मफादात पर कायम होते हैं, न कि यकतरफ़ा एहसान या बरतरी के दावों पर। इसलिए इस तरह के बयानात वक्ती तौर पर तो असर डाल सकते हैं, मगर तवील मुद्दत में वो ताल्लुकात में पेचीदगियाँ भी पैदा कर सकते हैं। आया वो मुश्तरका सिफारती हिकमत अमली इख्तियार करते हैं या बदस्तूर मुनक़सिम रहते हैं। ये भी मुमकिन है कि आलमी सियासत में अगला मरहला बयानियों की जंग का हो, जहाँ अल्फाज, कवानीन और पाबंदियाँ हथियार के तौर पर इस्तेमाल हों। इस जंग में वही फरीक कामयाब होते हैं जो ना सिर्फ ताकत रखते हों, बल्कि अपनी बात को कानूनी, इखलाकी और सिफारती बुनियादों पर पेश करने की सलाहियत भी रखते हों। आखिर में ये कहना मुनासिब होगा कि मौजूदा सूरत हाल को किसी एक मजहब, कौम या खित्ते के खिलाफ या हक में सादा बयानिए में समेटना हकीकत का अधूरा अक्स होगा। असल सवाल ये है कि क्या आलमी निज़ाम इख्तिलाफ, तनकीद और एहतजाज को बर्दाश्त करने की सलाहियत रखता है, या वो खौफ और दबाव के जरिए खामोशी मुसल्लत करने की तरफ बढ़ रहा है।
Book I wrote in about 1975 was the history of the Hungarian uprising of 1956 against the communist occupation of Hungary, for which I had access to a certain number of CIA files, which were very interesting because the CIA carried out in-depth psychological interrogations of a large number of the Hungarian refugees who came to this country after 1956. But the odd thing was that when I began writing that book, I discovered from the CIA files that the Hungarian people, when they started that uprising, it began as an anti-Jewish pogrom. It was essentially an anti-Jewish revolution and not an anti-communist revolution to begin with for the first few days. The Hungarian people regarded their government in the 1950s as being a Jewish government. And they regarded the secret police, the dreaded Államvédelmi Hatóság, the AVH, as being a Jewish secret police. And essentially it was, because when the Red Army entered Hungary in 1945, they brought back into Hungary all the Jews who had taken refuge in the Soviet Union, and they were the ones who got the plum jobs, and they were the ones who got the trustworthy jobs as secret police chiefs and as torturers. And that's why the Jews were so hated in Hungary by 1956, because they were regarded as the people who had inflicted this nameless misery on the Hungarian people. And so the uprising began as an anti-Jewish uprising. Every one of the Hungarian leaders at that time in 1956, Rákosi and Farkas and Gero and the rest of the Hungarian leaders, they were all Jews. And I never realized that when I set out to write it. It's an extraordinary fact, the way these things are kept away from the public consciousness. In particular, the local population had bitter scores to settle with the Jews, because during the 1 year when those countries were occupied from 1940 to 1941 under the Hitler-Stalin Pact, they were occupied by the Soviet Union. The NKVD, which was the secret police, the forerunner of the KGB, had occupied those three countries with a reign of terror, and using largely Jewish officers, because the KGB or the NKVD was largely Jewish officers at that time, they had carried out a rule of liquidation and purge in those three countries, murdering hundreds of thousands of local middle-class entrepreneurs. The priests, the businessmen, the intellectuals were rounded up, driven off at dead of night by the communists, by these Jewish organizations, and murdered. And a year later, when Hitler's armies invaded and marched through these countries, they found the local population busy solving the Jewish problem for them, taking revenge. Nobody likes talking about that now, but if you read the records, particularly the German military records, where reports are coming to Hitler's headquarters saying, when we arrived in Riga, we found the local population busy exterminating the Jews, what shall we do? And from Hitler's headquarters back goes a signal saying, don't interfere. Don't interfere. This is the true story of what happened, but it's an unpopular story. And of course, inevitably, when the book came out, I was accused of anti-Semitism for having written it. But what am I supposed to do when you discover something as a historian? Are you supposed to try and pretend it isn't that? And if you do pretend it isn't that, you're doing the Jewish people more harm than good.
1959. Havana, Cuba. A 33-year-old revolutionary seizes power. Fidel Castro overthrows a US-backed dictator. His first moves shock Washington. Seizes American oil refineries, nationalizes banks, gives land to peasants. Then allies with the Soviet Union, 90 miles from Florida. President Eisenhower's response? Remove him. The CIA gets to work. 1961. They train 1,400 Cuban exiles. Arm them. Send them to invade. Bay of Pigs. Castro's forces crush them in 72 hours. The invasion fails on live television. America is humiliated. So the CIA changes strategy. Just kill him. Operation Mongoose begins. They try poison pills hidden in his food. Fail. Exploding cigars. Fail. Poison diving suit for his hobby of scuba diving. Fail. Mafia hitmen hired with briefcases full of cash. Fail. A girlfriend recruited to slip pills into his drink. She falls for him instead. Warns him. Fail. Sniper rifles, car bombs, booby-trapped seashells placed where he dives. All fail. The attempts keep coming. Through Kennedy, through Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush again, Obama. 11 US presidents, over 600 documented assassination attempts. Not one succeeds. Castro keeps giving speeches, building hospitals, defying embargoes, outlasts every CIA director who tried to kill him. November 25th, 2016. Fidel Castro dies, in his bed, surrounded by family. Age 90, natural causes. The man America spent 60 years trying to kill died on his own terms. 600 attempts, 11 presidents. He outlived them all.
Not to be a conspiracy theorist, but have you ever noticed that ISIS and Al-Qaeda fight along the Israeli border, but they don't ever attack Israel directly? They tell us that Muslims hate Jews. So why don't they ever attack Israel directly? Why do they only fight fellow Muslims, which is entirely against their religion? Well, I know why. It's because Al-Qaeda works for the United States government and ISIS is an Israel and US government creation. Listen, if you think about it, it makes sense. Neither of these groups do anything Islamic. They don't ever attack Israel. They don't ever attack the Gulf region. They only fight fellow Muslims, which again is against their religion, in countries like Libya and Syria. And we literally use them to overthrow governments in Libya, in Syria, which only furthers Israel's interests. We used ISIS to overthrow Gaddafi in Libya. And last year, we used Al-Qaeda to overthrow Assad in Syria. Think about this. The president of Syria is a member of Al-Qaeda, okay? There's no such thing as a former member of Al-Qaeda. You don't just wake up one day and be like, oh, I've had enough. I want to now go be a diplomat. That is not a thing. The current president of Syria was in prison in Iraq for 5 years, being tortured by the CIA and the US government. And now all of a sudden we've employed him and installed him as the president of Syria. And you're going to try to tell me that Al-Qaeda is not a creation of the US government when it's proven that we created Al-Qaeda to overthrow the Soviet Union in Afghanistan? So we just stopped working with them? That's what I'm supposed to believe? No, we created Al-Qaeda, we've been working with Al-Qaeda, and we created ISIS, and we've been working with ISIS. That is why they don't ever attack Israel and the Gulf region, and they only fight Muslims to further Israel's interests. But hey, listen, don't take my word for it. Last week, the president of Syria, a current member of Al-Qaeda, spoke at the United Nations. We literally had a reward out for this guy for $10 million. And he is now speaking at the United Nations. So there's all the proof you need that he is a creation of the United States government, and he has always worked for the United States government.
यूनिवर्सल टेलीविजन को सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें उसके बाद बेल बटन पे क्लिक करें और अपने कमेंट्स के सेक्शन में अपने कीमती जो ख्यालात का इजहार ज़रूर